So we've already talked a little bit about what the America will look like under a Jeffersonian presidency. It's vastly different than how America looked under the presidency of either George Washington or John Adams, right? There's a different perspective on free speech, on foreign policy, on debt, on manufacturing. One of its major changes and challenges is about trade and land. So in 1801, when Jefferson becomes president, the western boundary of America is the Mississippi River, and the southern boundary is North Florida. Outside of this area, which you see in the map here, is French, Spanish, and Native Americans. And Thomas Jefferson wants the land west of the Mississippi, and he wants New Orleans, right? New Orleans is especially important. You can see here that it is Spanish and French. The New Orleans is the mouth of the Mississippi, right? If you want trade, especially if you want to be in this sort of Virginia, Georgia, Northwest Territory area that boundaries on the Mississippi River, you need to use the Mississippi River to get your grain to the market, and you cannot do that if you can't. You can go up and down the Mississippi River, well, not really very well, but a little bit, right? But you want to be able to use that port of New Orleans to go and trade your grain other places. Grains are generally not good for travel over land. But if you can go by water, you might be able to make it worthwhile to move that far west. Now, there are a bunch of machinations over the Mississippi. At the end of the French and Indian War, the French, who had owned New Orleans, gave it to the Spanish for being their allies in the war. The Spanish, by 1800, were getting tired of having this land, right? It's getting expensive. They were getting concerned about encroaching Americans. So in 1801, they turned New Orleans back to the French in return for a small kingdom in Italy. So by 1802, France is their new neighbor in New Orleans. And in 1802, Napoleon is the leader of France. That was starting in 1799. Now, Napoleon decides to stop the Mississippi trade by Americans, right? He says they're smuggling, they're not paying for the right of usage of the Mississippi. In 1802, says you cannot sail through New Orleans at all anymore. They were paying taxes to go through that, but there's too much smuggling. We won't allow any Americans to go through. This is a disaster for Thomas Jefferson, right? People are really upset, and they want to go to war with France over the Mississippi River. The last thing that Thomas Jefferson wants is to go to war with France, right? Especially since it would probably mean an alliance with Britain, some of the major foreign things that he's never wanted. Strangely enough, Thomas Jefferson is saved by the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution really put the wrench in Napoleon's plans. So here we have an image of Saint-Domingue, which is where France raises a lot of sugar. Now, on Saint-Domingue, where Haiti is, there's a slave rebellion. Thomas Jefferson really hates the rebellion, slave revolt. He sees it as a bad example to slaves in America that could cause a lot of anarchy. Right? So Thomas Jefferson cuts off trade to Haiti to sort of kill that revolution. Napoleon is trying to send troops to Haiti to crush it, right? So he keeps his soldiers, the French keep their soldiers in New Orleans to sort of, before they send them to Haiti, and to sort of enforce the cutoff to Haiti. Right. So to stop the trade down the Mississippi River. So now there's soldiers in Haiti and the soldiers in New Orleans. Right. So this is not something that Thomas Jefferson wants. He did not want soldiers in New Orleans so close to the American border. While soldiers are in Haiti, they start succumbing to diseases, right? So the guerrilla fighters give dysentery and malaria to the French. The French end up can't send any more troops because they're already also fighting in Britain. And so France makes a deal with the United States to sort of say, that's it, we're done here. We can't handle both the Haitian Revolution and fighting the British and maintaining soldiers in New Orleans. So the deal is that they sell what is appropriately named the Louisiana Territory for about $15 million, and that's a steal at the time. And it extends the American territory from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Rocky Mountains. And now the Americans get the Mississippi River and New Orleans port, right? Now, the Louisiana Purchase is a way so France got out of things, but it's a huge deal for the Americans. It's a great thing for Federalists, right? Having a federal government buy a huge amount of land is a big extension of federal powers, right? They don't mind expanding federal land. They don't mind spending the money. They don't mind buying land without asking the residents of New Orleans what they think. But it is a problem for Thomas Jefferson, right? He believes in frugality. He believes in self-determination. And here, the government buying this huge amount of land, that's not a frugal government. And buying land without asking what the people who live there think about it, that's not in support of self-determination. So Thomas Jefferson acts and does that purchase not compatible with his ideals. But he doesn't allow it to sort of change it, right? He says, all right, this is best for the country, so he goes along with it, right? He's willing to put aside his principles for a good deal. And in many ways, this does support some of ideals because Thomas Jefferson is committed to expansion west, right? He wants more Americans to be farmers, to have their own land, to be independent, and this supports that movement. Now, there is an additional problem that at the same time that is bothering Thomas Jefferson. Both the French and the English have Caribbean islands, right, with sugar and sugarcane, and the French also have some slaves. And the French ship, they transport stuff from their islands to Europe and America, as do British ships. So the British have the advantage because they can cut off the French ships. Right? The British have better ships. They can go a little faster, and they can stop the French from doing a bunch of their shipping. Right? This is a sort of almost military tactic, and this hurts the French economy. So the British have a better navy, and they target the French. So the Americans offer their ships for French trade. So what they say is that the Americans will take American ships filled with French sailors that go to French islands, sail to America, unload, reload, and then go back to Europe. This is called the re-export trade. It mostly happened in the 1790s to early 1800s. This does not make Britain happy, right? The U.S., the Americans are hurting British trade. The Americans are helping the French. So British people start seizing the Royal Navy, start seizing American ships. Britain has more ships and they can do that. So they start to make it problematic, and they make it problematic with the Americans, and they say it's illegal for Americans to trade with Europe. Now, the Americans like the re-export trade because it helps them make money, right? It's extra taxes. Goods come into America, you have to pay taxes, and they go out. It's a little bit longer for French, and it's more expensive for French, but it's a little safer. And it helps Thomas Jefferson pay down the federal debt. So there's a sort of booming industry for the re-export trade. The British don't like it so much that they start doing the practice called impressment. Right? This is, they determine that the re-export trade is illegal, and they start seizing American ships. And they determined that anyone who is found to be at all British on an American or French ship must be conscripted into the Royal Navy. Right? Now, the Royal Navy is a very hard life. Very cramped, poor conditions, bad food, bad pay, no shoes. Many sailors don't like it, and at the first chance they run away. So the British are saying, there's too many people running away, they're pretending to be Americans, we're going to go find them. They're working on American ships, and we're going to recruit them back to the Royal Navy, right? And the idea is if you were born in Britain, you must serve. If you're born in Britain, then you're British, and so we will take you away. Which of course is a problem because that's true for most Americans. If they're born in America before 1776, they're born British. Now the Americans don't like this because they see America as the land of liberty, and this impressment seems the opposite of liberty. And it's really hard to tell a British person from America. And they look the same, they talk the same. There is an American versus British accent. They sound very much the same. So, as far as we can tell, about 6,000 American citizens were impressed into the Royal Navy. Some were British born, some not, but they were all American citizens. This is clearly a point of contention between the Americans and the British. It doesn't come to a head until 1807. In 1807, some British soldiers near Virginia abandoned the Royal Navy and joined an American merchant ship called the Chesapeake, and that's the boat on the right. The British sent a frigate named Leopold to retrieve the sailors. Now the Leopold comes aboard the Chesapeake and asks for the sailors, and the Chesapeake refuses. Right? They say the ships are sovereign, belonging to the nation, and you can't not board it without permission. So the Leopold attacks, killing 3 and injuring 18. Right? The Chesapeake is unprepared for such an attack. And then they send a boat on board to get the sailors. And they put the sailors on trial. And it turns out that they seized 4 sailors, and only 1 was British born. He's hanged, and the others get 500 lashes, which are later commuted and are returned to America. Now, Americans are not happy with this at all, that the British could come on board an American ship, seize American citizens, and give them lashings. Seems completely wrong. And so they start calling for war. Now, Jefferson doesn't want a war with Britain. He didn't want a war with France. He doesn't want a war with Britain. And so he tries a diplomatic solution. And his diplomatic solution is an embargo. So the embargo in 1807 is the idea that there is no trade in and no trade out. You close all the ports in America. With the idea that, well, Americans can live without industrial goods and luxury goods, but Britain can't live without food. So the idea is, well, America will suffer, but will be rewarded later, and America will suffer less than the British, right? To put pressure on the British to not do impressment. This ends up being a failure because, of course, the British get food other places, right? And it basically destroys the economy, right? Farmers can't sell their crops, can't pay for their farms, they can't pay for their style of living. It's horrible for merchants, for sailors, for shipbuilders. Jefferson's policy is an economic pain on most Americans. So Americans are really not happy. That's how you get this political cartoon. There's lots of these. Anyways, is that damn it, how he nicks them, and then the turtle is supposed to be the taxes, the embargo. And here's a smuggler trying to get off some superfine that's tobacco over into a British ship. He says, "Oh, this cursed, oh, grab me." And "oh, grab me" is, of course, embargo spelled backwards. So Britain does fine. They end up getting their food from Latin America. Latin America is open because Spain is falling apart. So Thomas Jefferson basically gives up. And in 1808, he leaves as president and turns it over to Madison.